This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. First major veto showdown today between President Bush and the Democratic majority in Congress. It is over control of national economic policy and the nation's political agenda. Mr. Bush flatly vetoed raising the national minimum wage to $4.55 an hour, what would have been the first minimum wage increase in 8 years. CBS News chief political correspondent Bruce Morton begins our coverage.
The president vetoed the minimum wage bill aboard Air Force One. Congressional Democrats were instantly indignant.
I deeply regret that the president has chosen to veto this bill. So important, I think, to millions and millions of working men and women in the United States.
Senate Leader Mitchell attacked the president for urging a cut in the capital gains tax while vetoing a hike in the minimum wage.
What the president is saying is, to those who have much, we must give more. To those who have little, we must give nothing.
The American people overwhelmingly support this bill. The Congress supports this bill, and 14 million Americans need this bill.
The president, of course, disagrees. The minimum wage is now $3.35 an hour, unchanged since 1981. Mr. Bush would have supported an increase to $4.25 an hour over 3 years. The Congress voted an increase to $4.55. And Mr. Bush wanted a sub-minimum training wage to new workers during their first 6 months on the job. Congress approved one only for workers on their very first job. The president vetoing the bill said it would stifle the creation of new job opportunities and damage the employment prospects of young people.
The president staked out a position, and we think he was right. And to do otherwise, I think, would frankly weaken the president's hand on a number of issues, frankly, that are coming down the pike.
The House will try tomorrow to override the veto, but in fact, neither Senate nor House passed the bill the first time by the two-thirds majority an override requires. The Democrats are simply trying to score some political points and perhaps push the president towards a compromise, something between his bill and theirs. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.
More now about the economics, tactics, and politics behind the president's veto of this minimum wage increase. A short while ago, I spoke with CBS News White House correspondent Wyatt Andrews, who's traveling with the presidential party. Wyatt, how big a thing is this with President Bush and his administration?
Well, Dan, it was so big that he didn't wait a second to veto this message. It was part of the White House threat all along that they had the veto message written, and that the only thing President Bush needed to do was date it and sign it. They made good on that promise today. In fact, the president felt so strongly about it, he took the unusual step of sending his veto message from Air Force One. He was in the air between Yellowstone and Lincoln, Nebraska, where he was here to give a speech on ethanol. And the White House felt strongly they needed to live up to the president's word that he would veto this as soon as he got it.
But why so defiant on this? Why this issue?
There are two reasons for that, Dan. The first one is strictly economic. The president feels strongly that this kind of hike in the minimum wage would actually cost hundreds of thousands of jobs. But the other reason, Dan, is quite political. In the wake of the John Tower nomination is when this strategy was formulated, that they would have to take a stand with the Democrats in order to avoid a complete juggernaut where the Democrats could roll over the president on any issue. And that included minimum wage. It also included other issues the White House was afraid of, including mandatory leave for workers. So what they did, Dan, was decide that this was the issue on which they would send a message to the Democrats that they could not be rolled over.
Wyatt Andrews, thanks. The news got more threatening for the American taxpayer today as the news got more grim for the already battered savings and loan industry. With S&Ls losing money now at a rate not seen since the Great Depression, costs to bail them out keep climbing. And CBS News business correspondent Ray Brady reports there's anxiety over from where all that bailout money will come.
This was our startling news. The government reporting the nation's savings banks lost $3.4 billion in the first 3 months of this year, even more than they lost in last year's fourth quarter.
By my arithmetic and most people's arithmetic, that works out to about $10 to $12 million per day.
This is an enormous, absolutely an enormous scandal, a tremendous wasting of resources that could have been put to real use by our society.
Nearly two-thirds of that loss, $2.2 billion, came in Texas. With financial deregulation, savings banks went on a real tear, lending government-insured money on schemes that were pie-in-the-sky speculations or just plain fraudulent.
For an institution that has Uncle Sam's guarantee behind it, to then go out and invest in windmill farms and the wackiest kinds of things makes no sense at all.
And how much will it cost to bail all this out?
My personal estimate is probably upwards of $275 billion, including money already spent.
If that estimate is right, $275 billion to bail out the savings banks, it works out to more than $2,500 for every taxpayer. And that estimate is more than double the figure President Bush proposed in his bailout of the savings industry. The savings bank's biggest problem may be winning back all the depositors who withdrew billions of dollars from them and are now equally mad about paying the bill to bail them out. Dan?
Ray Brady, thanks. And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, correspondent Bob Simon on China's new most wanted list of student protesters. And Eric Engberg on what's wanted by businessmen on American campuses. Rolled over because they were leaders of a mass movement for freedom and democracy. Now they are the hunted. They are China's most wanted criminals, heading a list of, quote, counter-revolutionaries put out today by the communist authorities. The Communist Party and the government ask all citizens to help hunt down the students and prevent them from escaping. Meanwhile, the government and the party were trying to promote the idea that martial law has brought Beijing back to normal. Bob Simon reports.
China opened its biggest tourist attraction today, and nobody came. In a grandstand play for an appearance of normality, the gates to the Forbidden City were flung open. The same gates which thousands of troops rushed through 10 days ago, and today, a few forlorn Chinese out-of-towners were ushered through. Outside, there was a far more forbidding city called Beijing. Just on the other side of the walls, Tiananmen Square, and more than 36 tanks and armored personnel carriers. Troops may have thinned out in many parts of Beijing, but they're keeping a tight grip on the railway station. This is the escape hatch to the countryside, to anonymity. There are long lists of students, of activists, who will not be allowed to take that road. Many were arrested at the station today, identified for the first time by Chinese TV, not as hooligans and ruffians, but as organizers of the rebellion. China's media de-escalated the war of words with Washington tonight and stepped up the battle against their own students. Dissident Fan Lizhe was still in the American embassy, but not on the evening news program. Instead, a new most wanted list, 21 posters, all students, age, height, complexion, accent, sound of voice, all described, along with instructions to all border posts to be on the lookout. Student leader Wu Kaishi got top billing, and to illustrate what the announcer described as his evil face, there was video from a security camera in a Beijing hotel, showing him out to lunch during the hunger strike, even though on May 29th, the date on the screen, the strike was in fact over. All over Beijing today, people with red armbands reading "Arm of the Law" stood watch. These workers were assigned by their factory to look out for troublemakers. So how long do they think they're going to be out here doing this?
They'll have to wait and see, and if things stay calm, then they'll go back. If anything happens, then they'll come out in force.
The beatification of the army and the demonization of the students are in full swing now, with television giving the authorities the medium for an instant rewrite of history. But in case it's gone by too fast, a book called Oppose the Rebellion came out today. The announcer advised everyone to read it and promised ominously that there will be sequels. Bob Simon, CBS News, Beijing.
Mikhail Gorbachev and West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl signed a wide-ranging declaration today. It is intended to lay a new basis for Soviet relations with Western Europe. In general terms, it promises peace, human rights, and economic cooperation. As our Moscow correspondent Barry Peterson reports, the economic cooperation is clearly at the top of Gorbachev's agenda.
They signed on the dotted line, Mikhail Gorbachev hoping to entice West German investors to Russian soil by guaranteeing their rights to do business in the Soviet Union. Tonight, Gorbachev, the salesman, was out to close the deal. Our perestroika, he said, is opening up new opportunities.
Gorbachev's agenda is simple. He wants the know-how and the magic that helped West Germany rebuild after World War II to help the Soviet Union rebuild after more than 7 decades of communism.
Soviet managers are already learning how it's done in West German factories, learning how they can turn perestroika into productivity. But some Americans are concerned that Gorbachev is raising money to prop up his faltering economy from businessmen entranced more with his style than his substance.
I do not think we should be romantic capitalists, and Dad is someone who is involved with the Soviet Union so he can have his picture taken with Reza.
Others say it's Soviet allies such as East Germany that face the danger from Gorbachev's flirtation with capitalism. The old-line regime will find it harder to disavow the prosperity of West Germany when Gorbachev is busy endorsing it.
It is Eastern Germany that threatens one day, someday, to turn Western. It is not West Germany that risks to turn Eastern.
In his first visit here as the Soviet leader, Gorbachev has West Germany in thrall. Today, wife Raisa called a child up to a balcony in Bonn's main square. This scene shown across West Germany tonight, over and over. Gorbachev, said one newspaper, is now the great Soviet communicator. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Bonn.
Another economic jolt today in this country. The Commerce Department said its broadest measure of foreign trade widened sharply in the first 3 months of the year to $30.69 billion. That was 7% larger than the deficit for the last quarter of 1988. More trouble at the Rocky Flats nuclear weapons plant near Denver. A federal investigation is still unfolding into whether the U.S. Energy Department and Rockwell International Corporation knowingly released nuclear waste at the facility into the air and water. Local residents aren't waiting before they take action. CBS News correspondent Bob McNamara reports on Rocky Flats and its increasingly rocky relationship with the public.
Denver's fear of its nuclear neighbor now looms large. And on the fringes of the Rocky Flats weapons plant today, a canal was dug to divert potentially radioactive plant water runoff from contaminating nearby suburban water supplies.
This is something we felt we had to do now to make our citizens feel safe.
1 week after FBI agents raided Rocky Flats, tipped to an alleged government and contractor conspiracy that the plant illegally burned and dumped nuclear waste for years, the public and political air has filled with outrage.
We are tired of being nuclear guinea pigs, living in a radioactive fallout zone, forced by bureaucrats to drink and breathe nuclear waste.
We either have to make that plant safe and have it verified that it's safe from an independent source, or it's got to be closed.
Owned by the Energy Department and run by Rockwell International, Rocky Flats makes plutonium triggers for nuclear bombs. But despite a reputation as a safe facility that earned Rockwell millions in bonuses, the plant has been dogged by accidents and lawsuits, by reports of possibly deadly worker contamination and slipshod management.
The Russians couldn't do worse than these people are doing to this country as far as harming this country. And I say, throw them bastards in jail, get on with the job of defending the country, and make us a viable industry.
It was former plant engineer Stone who blew the whistle on Rocky Flats, charges that brought nighttime FBI spy flights over the plant last winter to check for illegal burning. To date, Rockwell's only reply to the FBI probe has been terse.
We have been complying with all applicable state and federal laws, and will continue to do so.
Though the FBI investigation could take a year and officials say there is no cause for alarm, the fact that one government agency is investigating another gives a city little reason to rest assured. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Denver.
Fran Allison, who starred with two puppets in the popular 1950s television show Kukla, Fran and Ollie, died today. She was 81. Fran Allison died in a Sherman Oaks, California hospital. Along with Miss Allison, the program featured a carefree Oliver J. Dragon and a worried Kukla who always needed reassurance.
That'd be fun.
For all time, my love, love me.
Ready, New York?
Yeah, New York is ready.
Ready, Santa Fe?
Right, we're online.
This is Charleston. We're ready.
We're ready in Dallas.
Let's do it. Everybody online?
Go ahead, drop it.
Can a 10-city conference call be so clear you can actually hear a pin drop?
Got it.
For fiber optic calls that sound better and cost less.
I got it.
That was a pin? Call Sprint now and talk with the best.
You've just been caught knocking off the Kellogg's Cracklin' Oat Bran. How do you handle the consequences?
Did you eat all the Cracklin' Oat Bran?
Who, me?
Did you eat all the Cracklin' Oat Bran? Did you eat all the Cracklin' Oat Bran?
I didn't do it. I did not do it. No, absolutely not.
With the crunchy sweet taste of Kellogg's Cracklin' Oat Bran, an open box is an empty box.
When you go shopping, you have to find the right fit, style, color.
When you do, you feel great.
But when you also find the Made in the USA label, you feel even better.
It's a great feeling.
Made in the USA.
Not this much, not this much, just this much. New Advanced Formula Kaopectate works fast to relieve diarrhea and cramps, and it tastes better, too. New Advanced Formula Kaopectate, more than ever, the diarrhea specialist.
Amid the negative campaign tactics in the ethics warfare in Washington, Congressman William Gray of Pennsylvania made a point today of talking up and quoting from a Justice Department statement. A Justice Department statement saying Gray is not himself a target of any criminal investigation. Government sources have said there is a preliminary investigation into questions of a possible no-show employee on Gray's staff. Gray is chairman of the House Democratic Caucus and is running in tomorrow's Democratic leadership race to be majority whip. Big business, heavy science, and the campus connection. Congress held hearings today looking into growing ties between scientific researchers on campus and corporate sponsors. Whether this is good business and good science or a conflict of interest promoting private profit over the public good. Correspondent Eric Ingberg has been investigating this controversy over learning and earning and ethics.
What's going on in the research labs and the computer cubicles of MIT and other big universities is not just learning, it's business. It's estimated that in the 80s, the amount of campus research bankrolled by corporations has doubled. Colleges now take in corporate cash by selling the services of their labs and their lecturers, cutting deals on everything from new age machines to genetic super mice. To the point that critics worry the pursuit of knowledge is losing out to the pursuit of profit.
With the advent of money and greed in the university, the ethics of Wall Street have also invaded the university.
Corporate giving to universities is now more like give and take. Last year, corporations made deals with MIT to the tune of $40 million.
Well, there are a variety of kinds of arrangements in which we receive support from profit-making corporations, that sector of the business community.
Gray and other university presidents argue the money helps the schools grow and puts students and faculty in touch with the outside world. But there are concerns the new coziness means university researchers will end up studying what corporations want studied. The case of historian David Noble is fueling this debate. He says his vocal criticism of corporate ties to MIT led to denial of tenure and dismissal. Now teaching at Drexel University, he is suing MIT and raising questions about the integrity of higher education.
It's the one place in society, and people depend upon this, where the profit motive and immediate return is not the overriding principle.
At Harvard, some students are questioning the links to business.
Here in the Science Center, in the biology buildings behind it, professors are deeply involved in the biotechnology industry, are consulting for the industry, serving on boards of directors, accepting corporate sponsorships.
At the University of Florida, graduate students get credits for research on a drug being developed by a company located on the campus. It is partially owned by faculty members. When a chemistry professor objected the students might be harmed by their exposure to the drug, he says he was rebuffed.
And a lot of the administration, a lot of the faculty were going to make money if it succeeded. They owned stock in it, they were consultants with it, et cetera, et cetera.
Charges of conflict of interest were also raised at the University of Pittsburgh Medical School, which accepted $1.5 million from drug companies for research on a children's ear medicine. Professor Erdem Kantikin concluded the drug did not work. When he went public, he was stripped of all duties, which his supporters say was an attack on academic freedom.
If somebody is doing something which is against that financial stream of things, that person is expendable.
Those who run universities dismiss conflict of interest questions, and they say the new closeness between corporations and higher learning is needed to help America compete with foreign business.
The record is quite clear that we have not been up to world standards in the last 20 years. Change requires both change inside the educational institutions and change in the employers.
But MIT, for one, does not restrict its corporate ties to U.S. firms. In fact, the school has a Tokyo office where a staff cuts deals with eager Japanese companies. For government policymakers, the issue is broader. Is the university an economic tool or something more?
The chief cost is to the public, which depends upon the universities for objective, disinterested study and analysis of their society. This is what is being lost.
Congress is also concerned about taxpayer money being lost. After all, universities are kept afloat with federal dollars, money that's supposed to benefit the public, not some bottom line. Eric Engberg, CBS News, Washington.
Freedom's the one.
If you've got dental work, you've got 3 great reasons to chew Freedent gum. You know Freedent won't stick to your dental work, and Freedent freshens your breath. But maybe you didn't know that Freedent moistens your mouth. So if you hate a dry mouth like I do, chew Freedent.
Freedent's the one that took the stick out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth, and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
Guess what? There's no bathroom on the bus.
Relax.
But diarrhea usually comes back.
Took the Imodium AD, didn't you?
Yeah, but just a little cup.
Perfect.
Imodium AD often stops diarrhea with 1 dose, instead of all those spoonfuls you may need of the leading remedy.
I'm in a rest stop.
You coming?
Nope, I'm fine. Imodium AD. It can make your first attack of diarrhea your last.
Terry's family loves olive oil, but they could do without the excess fat and calories. So Terry, meet Pam. New olive oil Pam. It adds about 90% less fat and calories.
When Ocean Spray adds sweet, sunny oranges to tangy cranberries, something cool and refreshing happens to sandwiches.
Wow!
New Cran Fruit brand sauces add a cool, refreshing zing to everything.
Well, life hasn't been easy for Willie B, the Atlanta Zoo gorilla. First, the lonely early years in what was rated as one of the nation's worst zoos. Then, in greatly improved Atlanta Zoo conditions, a painful public introduction to gorilla society. You can guess the next step for old Willie, with all the world watching. Peter Van Sant has the embarrassing details.
It was just a year ago when Willie B, the gorilla who had spent 27 years alone in a cage at the Atlanta Zoo, took his first steps outdoors.
Oh, the improvement in quality of life for Willie B is absolutely tremendous.
Willie B was then introduced to a number of other gorillas on a see but don't touch basis. Recently, after months of checking each other out, Willie B and 2 females were put into the same cage. Willie reacted to the aggressive females by trying to get to the next county.
I would say the first day Willie panicked. He panicked because he didn't know what was happening.
Willie's first date turned even more humiliating when the 2 hen-pecking females began slapping him around.
That is not really a belligerent move. It's trying to establish who's in charge, a dominance move, if you like.
I don't think he's a wimp at all. It's just that he's, I mean, they do call him gentle giants. He's a very gentle, even-tempered gorilla.
Willie B ended the day exhausted. Since then, he has established his dominance.
This relationship has very quickly turned into a very positive relationship. All 3 of the gorillas are getting along quite well.
Breeding in captivity is important to preserve gorillas, which are an endangered species. The Atlanta Zoo has built its impressive new gorilla center upon the hope that Willie B will sire some offspring. Has there been any thought about putting the backseat of a 57 Chevy in the cage?
Take him to a drive-in, maybe? We thought it would work. We would do it.
Zookeepers hope a sexually experienced female they've teamed with, Willie B, will show the anxious anthropoid the facts of life. In the meantime, Zoo Atlanta's most eligible bachelor is plain hard to get. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Atlanta.
And that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. See you tomorrow. Good night.
This is CBS.